welcome to this week's episode of Inspired Earth. Thank you so much for coming back and listening, everybody. I hope that you guys are having a great week. And we're going to start off with something that we have talked about previously. Do you remember the whale language segment that we had done in the past? Well, this is going to come back up again because apparently SETI has done some stuff with some whales. So we'll hear about that. And it's fun to have evolving stories like that. Like we have the Neuralink, and now we have the whale and the PFOS. You know, I was going to give us a break with the PFOS because we could just go on and forever about that. But yeah, and then with the geothermal as well, I guess we could also consider that to be in a follow-up type of topic here, with scientists have a conversation, quote unquote, with a humpback whale, which they hope will help mankind communicate with aliens ultimately one day. This was published by the New York Post. I know that's kind of controversial, but we're just going to read the article and have fun with it. But April 15th, and that was 5 days ago that this was published. And a group of scientists had a conversation with a humpback whale in Alaska, and they hope principles learned from it will someday help communicate with aliens. The team was assembled by SETI Institute, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to search for extraterrestrial intelligence across the universe. While the organization normally looks to the skies, they turned their attention to the seas last winter. So I kind of feel like this is a publicity stunt to get people's attention. It is really interesting, and it is like also scientifically valid, and everything they're saying is really good. But I feel like it's just to get people's attention. And SETI's always doing weird stuff, and they like say that not to like harp on SETI too much, but they will not want to communicate in specific ways or only do specific methods that they approve of. So it's interesting that they're even going with this whale thing, because they can be kind of conservative and not want to see different sorts of stuff. So while the organization normally looks to the skies, they turned to their attention to the seas last winter. Whales are a proxy for aliens, animal behaviorist Dr. Josie Hubbard tells the Post. They're intelligent creatures with a language that is foreign to us. The things that we learn from communicating with whales could help us when it comes time to connect with aliens. Their language is complex, adds Lisa Walker, a whale song theorist, that's an interesting title, who was part of a mission. They make whoops and thrups and groans and squeaks. Their vocalizations are fascinating. We are trying to figure out what the vocalizations mean. While scientists believe some of the whale noises are merely social sounds, they hypothesize that other vocalizations have specific communication values. They could be making commands, such as go up, down, here, or there. So what was the conversation between scientists and the whale, and what did it mean? In December 2023, the team was on a boat off the coast of Alaska. When they found a whale pod, they played underwater recordings of humpbacks. But despite their best efforts, most of the whales ignored them, or at least made no discernible acknowledgement of their sounds. But then one female humpback named Twain began circling the boat. As scientists played the recorded sounds, Twain began mimicking the noises and calling out to the boat as if to say hello. It was a contact call, says Hubbard. It's how the whales call to each other. They make whoops and thrups, and we believe that's how they determine each other's location. And here we're having a unique encounter with Twain. She gave a responding response. It might just have been saying hello and her responding hello and us saying hello again, but it was definite communication. She did it 36 times in 20 minutes and only stopped after the playback stopped. Yeah, that was definitely communication. A description An analysis of the encounter appears in a recent issue of the scientific journal Peer J, entitled Interactive Bioacoustic Playback as a Tool for Detecting and Exploring Non-Human Intelligence Conversing with Alaskan Humpback Whale. We believe this is the first communicative exchange between humans and humpback whales in the humpback language. Humpback whales are extremely intelligent, added co-author Dr. Fred Sharp of Alaska Whale Foundation. They have complex social systems, make tools, nets out of bubbles to catch fish, and communicate extensively with both songs and social calls. That's really interesting, out of nets made of bubbles to catch fish. I had heard of them like using bubbles to concuss fish and stuff like that, but I had never heard of it put like a net of bubbles. That's interesting. It's an interesting term or phrase. Also, say we can communicate somehow, like we're as well, a lot of scientists are talking about using AI to figure out the whale language, and the AI would probably be able to figure it out a lot easier than we could, because it's good at patterns and stuff like that. That's what AI excels at. So say hypothetically we could communicate with the whales and we could understand what they're saying and converse back with them. Would we even care what they responded with? Like, yes, we could talk to them, but would we value their response is the question. Or would we just keep on going? Like, what if the whales are like, stop destroying the earth, and we're just like, oh, dumb whales, and just keep on going, you know? That's my question, is after reading that, is would we even value the animals' speech? And if you remember, this is about, they tie it back to aliens with SETI. So take that parallel to ET. Say we could communicate with ET, and ET told us to stop destroying the planet for money. Would we listen to them? Would we value that? Or would we be so blinded, or at least our leaders would be so blinded by like their self-serving needs that they would just destroy the planet? It's an interesting question. That would we value these animals or aliens' words or thoughts or wishes? I'll let you ponder that. But here we have a follow-up with the geothermal energy. The DOE announced a plan earlier this month to decarbonize the building sector by 90% before 2050. Livuscu said commercial buildings are a core aspect of the government's initiative. Our vision is literally to expand it all to all the large buildings in Texas. So here we have a geothermal showcase. A historic area on South Congress unveiled a geothermal HVAC system on Wednesday. Penn Field hosts business like Google Fiber and Pandora alongside a former World War II airfield. Now the property is revamping its energy sources by using the Earth's internal heat to power heating and cooling systems in commercial buildings. Geothermal is unique because it's clean, it's abundant, it's essentially limitless and available everywhere. Geothermal heat pumps use water and constant temperature below ground to absorb or release heat from the air, depending on the season. Pumps can reduce energy consumption and emissions up to 72% compared to standard air conditioning equipment. And I'm not sure if it's going to mention it, but the coolant used in some air conditioners are really bad for the environment. So, like, we already talked about people smuggling in air conditioning coolant, which is crazy that it's getting to that point. But the more coolant that we use, the worse the global heating becomes and the greenhouse effects, because those are really bad for the ozone. Well, not the ozone, but the atmosphere. And we've banned a lot of them over the years, like different ones, and it's actually been pretty successful, the ones that we have banned. But So we don't even have to use those, but it creates a pattern of a self-feeding feedback loop of the more coolant you use, the hotter it gets, so you use more coolant, and then it gets hotter, and it's just a vicious cycle that just rages and rages and gets worse. So we have to cut it off and stop the flow of the feedback loop and keep it going. The earth, that is. Keep the earth going. And we can do that with the geothermal energy. So geothermal systems could potentially be the green energy compromise Texas is looking for, according to legislators and businesses alike. We're taking the old and bringing in the new, said Representative Lulu Flores from Austin, who attended Penfield's launch event. It also helps workers transition from an old industry or an existing industry into a new industry. So that's a great example of them talking about transitioning. And like a lot of these banking and elite type people that are in control of all of this stuff, they are always worried about the economy exploding whenever we bring in green energy, which is pretty much just nonsense. Like if you were to do it in the right way, which they're talking about right here, transitioning workers from the old industry or existing industries into new industries, like it's great. That's what you need to do. And it shows that it's not just an explosion. That's a myth. That's a complete myth. But Flores emphasized a need for risk assessment, but said she's hopeful that geothermal energy will help provide a continuum of resources. I remember when the wind farms were first coming on. Here we are 30 years later, and it's booming and it's growing. As legislators, I'm excited to learn more and looking for ways that we can help incentivize these kinds of programs so that they can succeed. And it's interesting she talked about wind farms because she's right. I remember when the first ones were being built, and then now they're just everywhere in Texas. If you get out further away from the cities, they have massive, massive wind farms, which is awesome. Nobody lives out there, so that's not really a problem. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick named innovative power generation on his list of 57 legislative priorities released last week. Patrick urged state senators to explore emerging technologies with the potential to add new dispatchable power to our electric grid. It's almost like they are, like they have like somebody listening to the show, possibly. I'm just joking about that, but honestly, we're getting it straight from the scientists, and you're hearing the lieutenant governor say exactly what I've been saying for like months. So we're right on target, guys. Everybody is like on the same page here. Patrick mentioned geothermal resources as a possible solution, along with small nuclear reactors, advanced batteries, and hydrogen technology. That's everything that we've talked about. The DOE announced a plan earlier this month to decarbonize the building sector by 90% before 2050. Lavuscu and commercial buildings are a core aspect of the government's initiative. Our vision is literally to expand it all to all large buildings in Texas. And so we mentioned how there's this prevalent myth that it occurs whenever there's a uncoordinated, just anarchic type of attempt at green energy transitioning, that it doesn't work, and sometimes it can just explode. But we saw with this other one, and what I mean by explode is that like stocks fail and people lose money and yada yada yada, and the investors are upset and stuff like that. That's what I mean, that they all freak out and say that is going to happen. But you can say or see here that by transitioning from old industries into existing ones by helping the workers and making sure that everybody doesn't lose their job, that's like a coordinated effort, and that it's sustainable and that it will work. And that's what you have to do. You have to have like the technology working with the government in a way to make an answer to something, rather than it just being anarchy. And here we have the banks, and they're saying that they don't want to finance global nuclear development. Banks unwilling to finance $5 trillion in global nuclear development because of the risk assessment, they say, basically, whenever we get down to the brass tacks of it all. And it's just really frustrating that we can't get any financing to do anything other than oil, and that's what the banks basically come down to, is that they're not willing to risk their resources in the oil, and they're not willing to try anything new because it's most likely going to fail. Why is it most likely going to fail? Because they're going to crush it and they're not going to let it work. After decades of being treated as the black sheep of the energy universe, nuclear energy is enjoying a renaissance in the US and many Western countries thanks to the global energy crisis, which, if you remember, we just talked about them, Stanford confirming the lithium ion laser fusion reactor. I guess they don't have it in a full-on reactor yet, but they confirmed that shooting lithium with an ion laser caused the fusion reaction, and Stanford confirmed it. So, bam, there we go. And then they made the stable room temperature gemstone by hitting that with a laser. And that was like a global effort with that. So we have a superconductor that just came out like a week ago, and then a lithium fusion reactor, but eventually will come out of it. That just got discovered like a couple weeks ago as well. And we were right on top of it. As soon as it happened, we already knew about it. And so many other things are going to start snowballing. We're already starting to see it. And we kind of saw it with Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick saying the same thing that we have been saying on this podcast. And by we, I mean, all of the listeners, because I'm just a solo guy here. But last month, 34 nations, including United States, China, France, Britain, and Saudi Arabia, committed to work fully to unlock the potential of nuclear energy by taking measures such as enabling conditions to support and competitively finance the lifetime extension of existing nuclear reactors, the construction of new nuclear power plants, and the early development of advanced reactors. And it's crazy that all happened last month, because what just happened last month? Lithium. That's the lithium ion advancement. The world is begrudgingly beginning to accept that technological bottlenecks limit solar and wind energy as large-scale substitutes for fossil energy. Which I'm not so sure about that part, because we have a lot of technology that proves otherwise. And we're reading from oilprice.com, the number one source of oil and energy news. So they might have some bias. But they do mention Ukraine, which is an interesting point here. They bring up Ukraine's dependence on Russian energy and that they're reliant on fossil fuel. So where's the technology there? If we're really allies, why are we inventing stuff left and right? And these people don't have any power in the middle of a war. But here we have former U.S. Energy Secretary Ernest Moniz, after listening to the panel of international lenders, they had a more realistic vision or perspective here. If the bankers are uniformly pessimistic, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So that's exactly what I'm saying. Even the U.S. Energy Secretary is saying that this is all being set up, and this is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that the bankers are unwilling to finance $5 trillion for global nuclear industry for development until 2020 or 2050. The project risks are really high, really high, European Investment Bank Vice President Thomas Ostros, adding that countries need to focus on more renewable and energy efficiency, and saying nuclear comes last, which is just really strange. But yeah, so that's a lot of jargon, but I got exhausted just reading all this bank stuff. But here we have revolutionary plant-based polymers promise to break the microplastic cycle. A new study indicates that plant-based polymers can degrade within a 7-month period. Microplastics are tiny, nearly indestructible fragments shed from everyday plastic products. As we learn more about microplastics, they keep getting worse. As well as well documented in our oceans and soil, we're now discovering them in the unlikeliest of places, like our arteries, lungs, and even placentas. Microplastics can take anywhere from 100 to 1,000 years to break down, and in the meantime, our planet and bodies are becoming more polluted with these materials every day. Finding viable alternatives to traditional petroleum-based plastics and microplastics have never been more important. New research from scientists at University of California, San Diego, and material science company Algenesis shows that their plant-based polymers biodegrade even at the microplastic level in under 7 months. The paper, whose authors are all UC San Diego professors, alumni, or former research scientists, appears in the journal Scientific Reports. We're just starting to understand the implications of microplastics. We've only scratched the surface of knowing the environmental and health impacts, said Professor of Chemistry and Biochemistry Michael Beckert, one of the paper's authors and Algenesis co-founder. Algenesis is the company. And notice it sounds like algae and Genesis put together. So what could they do? We're trying to find replacements for materials that already exist and make sure these replacements will biodegrade at the end of their useful life cycle, instead of collecting in the environment. That's not easy. When we first collected these algae-based polymers about 6 years ago, our intention was always that it could be completely biodegradable. We had plenty of data to suggest that our material was disappearing in the compost, but this is the first time we've measured it at a microparticle level. Putting it to the test. To test its biodegradability, the team ground their product into fine microparticles and used 3 different measurement tools to confirm that when placed in a compost, the material was being digested by microbes. The first tool was a respirometer. When the microbes break down the compost material, they release carbon dioxide, which the respirometer measures. The results were compared to the breakdown of cellulose, which is considered the industry standard of 100% biodegradability. The plant-based polymer matched the cellulose at almost 100%. Next, the team used water flotation. Since plastics are not water soluble and they float, they can easily be scooped off the surface of water. At intervals of 90 and 200 days, almost 100% of petroleum-based microplastics were recovered, meaning none of it had biodegraded. On the other hand, after 90 days, only 32% of algae-based microplastics were recovered, showing that more than 2/3 of it had biodegraded. After 200 days, only 3% was recovered, indicating that 97% of it had disappeared. The last measurement involved chemical analysis via gas chromatography/mass spectrometry, which detected the presence of monomers used to make the plastic, indicating that the polymer was being broken down into its starting plant material. Scanning electron microscopy further showed how microorganisms colonize the biodegradable microplastics during composting. This material is the first plastic demonstrated to not create microplastics as we use it. This is far more than just a sustainable solution for the end of product life cycle and crowded landfills. This is actually plastic that is not going to make us sick. Creating an eco-friendly alternative to petroleum-based plastics is only one part of the long road to viability. The ongoing challenge is to be able to use the new material on pre-existing manufacturing equipment that was originally built for traditional plastic. And here, Algenesis is making progress. That's extremely challenging. I'm surprised that they're even trying to do that. They're just going full in on it. That's incredible. They have partnered with several companies to make products that use the plant-based polymers developed at UC San Diego, including Trelleborg for use in coated fabrics and Rhino Shield for the use of production of cell phone cases. So yeah, they're not even waiting for that. They're just going for everything. That's what I had figured that they would most likely do. That's awesome. When we started this work, we were told it was impossible, stated Buchart. That is awesome. Now we see a different reality. There's a lot of work to be done, but we want to give people hope. It is possible. That's such an awesome ending to this. Now we see a different reality. There's a lot of work to be done, but we want to give people hope, and it is possible.